सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Hello my friends, I'm so excited as always. Today we're going to be talking about how digital transformation and inner transformation were connected, because I've led into both, but how it taught me to lead from inside. And we live in this world obsessed with transformation. You have digital transformation, business transformation, agile transformations. And personally, I have led many of those in the past 30 years. We measure success in terms of metrics and dashboards and milestones, KPIs. I was in love with all of it. But here's what that transformation framework taught me. That experience in digital transformation over the past 30 years has really taught me how do I transform myself. Having led teams through their businesses to adapt to the digital technology, it was now time for me to look inside and look at what it meant for myself. Because for years, trust me, I was a poster child. I was a model of what corporate success looked like. High performance, check. Reliable, check. Always on, check. If there was a fire, trust me, I'd be the first one to put it out. If there was a gap, I'd fill it. If there was a deadline, I'd meet it. Usually even before anybody else started that. But somewhere between this overachieving and overextending, I started losing the connection to myself, and I was becoming more and more disconnected from who I really was. And I didn't quite notice it at first. The praises were intoxicating. Love those. The consulting gigs, being sought after for leading businesses through their digital transformations, and constantly receiving the feedback, oh, you're such a rock star. You just keep doing whatever you do because that seems to be work. It all felt very good to the heart until one day it just didn't matter. Because behind all of that success was something that was quietly crumbling. And during COVID, that facade that I had scaffolded eventually started cracking. And while the world slowed down, I seem to have hit that gas pedal. I just sped up. I convinced myself that sure, I could handle it all. Those Zoom calls, the deadlines, and the constantly changing goalpost where you had to keep pivoting. And I almost wore that badge of busyness like that was my badge of honor. But it wasn't honor. It was exhaustion dressed up as achievement. And these red flags were all around. I just didn't see those. The loss of appetite, being irritable only with family members, but treating all of the friends and colleagues as though they were top tier people, those sleepless nights, and most importantly, the constant sense of dread. But I just brushed it aside, like, because isn't that what high performers do? Don't we just push through it, push through everything? And we even train our minds to keep repeating to ourselves, tough times never last, but tough people do. So yes, I was that tough one. But until one day I just couldn't take it anymore. It was a full blown burnout. That kind that doesn't just drain your energy, it completely wipes off your identity. I remember staring at my computer screen and realizing I couldn't even remember what was I supposed to be doing. Just like you have so many multiple Google tabs open, I had so many open even in my mind. I was completely lost. That's when I knew something had to change. I had a classic meltdown during my mid-year review. I think I've shared this many times because I really value mental health, wellness. And during that mid-year review, rather than admitting that my plate was overflowing, I decided to abandon that plate itself. I mean, come on, how could I ever admit that I was unable to keep up with the 60 plus hour work weeks? Although I met with my manager weekly, I had built up that unsustainable practice, which in the world of our project management, we also jokingly call it as a watermelon effect, which where we report everything is green on the outside and completely red on the inside. But jokes apart, the fact of the matter is that I just could not take even one step forward. I was completely paralyzed, paralyzed in fear, paralyzed in shame, in guilt, but most importantly, paralyzed in pride. Because in that moment, quitting felt like I wasn't still in control because I left on my terms. Admitting that I needed help felt like a failure. And honestly, it felt easier to just give up than to say out loud that I was struggling. We don't do that. We never show our struggles outwardly, right? So walking away from the job felt much safer than facing the truth that I needed help. And I still remember, I'll never forget my manager. He just looked me in the eyes and said, "You know what? Even if you work 80 to 100 hours a week, your tasks will never end. Work will still be there when you come back tomorrow. And guess what? The sun would have still risen in the east, and our organization would still continue operating as it has been." And that was my wake up call. The truth landed really hard that the weight I was carrying on my shoulders was self inflicted. Nobody expected me to have done that, but I just had assumed a wrong identity. I wasn't saving the world, I was burning out trying to prove that I could. So that's the moment when something changed, something clicked. And since then, it took almost 2 years of executive coaching, not to rebuild my career, but just to rebuild my self respect, to stop chasing worthiness and performance and start finding it in just being present. I was I was still used to chasing external validations that this concept was really, can you just do that? Just be present and everything seems to be okay. So I sought out thought leadership in authors like Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, Adam Grant, and I heard them repeatedly saying something that led to a really profound insight that true leadership begins with self leadership, and self leadership begins with self respect. I love using this concept of this is true leadership. This is built on self leadership, but the foundation is really self respect. Nothing can break this. So that's when I knew that I had to change something. Something's got to give. And I realized that returning and nurturing myself, which is this is what I call as myself, was my non-negotiable. I love this analogy so much. I leave it on right next to my desk so that it's a constant reminder that this is going to be my non-negotiable. And I realized that I had been leading from depletion so far, trying to pour out from an empty cup, thinking that, oh, that was so noble of me. Like, even though I was completely wiped out, I tried to even pour out from that empty cup. But you know what? You can't lead from depletion. In fact, you can give only what you have. If your cup is full of anxiety and worries, and because you've not nurtured it, you've not refilled it, what do you think you're going to give out to the world? Right? You cannot inspire from exhaustion. I heard my coach tell me, delegate to elevate, but you cannot elevate others when you yourself are running on fumes. So True leadership really begins with self leadership. And leadership is not about managing others, it's not about those titles, it's about taking care of others. It starts with first taking care of yourself, managing yourself so that you can then take care and manage other people. In fact, your inner world, everything that's going on in your mind, is the foundation for everything that you experience in your surrounding, right? And when you're out of alignment over here, it shows up in your outer world. You'll see them as strained relationships. Your creativity juices just somehow stop flowing, and your decisions are more reactive than being responsive. So you start normalizing stress, anxiety, frustration, and it's not about the external people that they are not listening to you, but rather it's like you are not listening to the signals that are coming from within you. So they're calling you, they're pleading you to come back to yourself and nurture the parts of you that you've been neglecting so far. And I've been there, trust me. I've been there chasing solutions from outside, thinking, if I just fix this situation, if I just fix that person the way they talk to me, if I just did something different, I'd find peace. But let me save you the detour. No one else can fix you. No one can do it for you. The real work, if you really want to put in some work, put it in self care. Make that as your non negotiable, because your inner foundation has to be a very strong one on which you can raise everything else from ground up. And when you do that, everything else, your relationships, your decisions, your joy, your creativity, everything starts to align, because if we build that inner strength, you'll be ready for facing any storm. So, first thing was that our inner world is reflected in the outside world that you see. The second thing is we have to remember that we are all energetic beings. We are magnetic fields in motion, and we attract experiences that mirror the energy from which we operate. So think about this. When you're stressed, you attract chaos. But when you're grounded, you attract harmony. So your inner world is like your operating system, and no transformation outside can succeed if your internal system just keeps crashing every so often. So self care isn't just selfish, it's a very strategic move. It's a strategy for your success. It's not a luxury, this is a necessity. When you prioritize yourself, you're not just in a survival mode, but you go into, I went personally from surviving to thriving, and that's when your life starts to eventually fall in place. We've heard this before, the battle between the ego and the soul. The ego says, let everything fall in place and then I'll be at peace. But the soul says, be at peace and then everything will fall in place. So surprisingly, all those external things that you were working around, those people, places, things, situations, nothing has changed. They don't change. What changes is your outlook. What changes is your viewpoint and your ability to see them differently. That's where real transformation begins, and you put things in a different perspective. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That was a game changer for me. So what does this nurturing the self really look like? Okay, let's be honest. When we hear self-care, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Massages? Yeah. Spa days, hot tubs, candles, shopping, outings, that vacation which you've been postponing since COVID. All those are really, really nice, but that just takes care of it at the superficial level. Nurturing yourself goes deeper than just what is seen on the surface. It's learning to sit with your own thoughts without distraction. It's giving yourself the permission to draw boundaries and say no without guilt. It's recognizing when your mind is tired before your body collapses. So it's not about doing less or becoming more or becoming something else, but it's doing what matters the most, what aligns with your values and your priorities. So it's not indulgence. Self care is not indulging in the self, but it is integrity and remembering who you already are. So nurturing yourself truly means it's meeting your inner needs. Most beautiful, accepting the way you are, just as is. There is no to be. We, in this digital transformation, we've always led people from this is the as is and this is the to be. Look, you don't need to change yourself at all. If you learn how to accept yourself as you are, with all your imperfections, with all your flaws and everything, the world will also accept you. Release the need for external validation. I was so obsessed with external validation. And I think many of us, we have that as a cultural thing. People, we get applauses, we get claps when we perform something, when we are successful at something. Oh, good job. That's how they raise us as children. But after those drop off, the behaviors don't drop off. We still expect somebody else to applaud for us for whatever we do. And we're looking for rewards and recognitions. So release that need for external validation. Replace your self criticism with self compassion. Very, very important. That's how you meet your inner needs. Because in this journey, of course, we're going to fall. Of course, we're going to make mistakes. There will be failures. It's not a bed of roses for the whole time, right? So don't be excessively criticizing your own self. Imagine that child who's learning to walk. When we go from the crawl, walk, run, in any skill that you have, you start from learning how to crawl, then you learn how to walk, and then eventually your expertise and proficiency becomes so good that you learn how to run. But if you gave up every single time you fell, you won't be able to pick up yourself and learn how to walk. And occasionally, when you slip, if you just give up walking, you won't learn how to run. So don't be criticizing yourself, but treat yourself with compassion, just the same way you treat everybody else, with kindness, with empathy, with compassion. And another thing I learned taking care of myself, nurturing my inner needs, was discarding labels and the titles to reconnect with my very own essence. Because leadership isn't about titles or positions, it's about how you show up in every area of your life. I used to think I needed a title for being a leader. But whether you're leading a team at work, or simply guiding your family and raising children, or even just not even everybody else, you're simply trying to navigate your own journey. You cannot lead effectively if you're running on empty. We all know that. Self care is what keeps you connected to that source of energy, that infinite source of energy of who you are. And once you are tapped into that source, you can show up as the best version of yourself for everyone and anyone who depends on you. So, whether you manage teams or whether you manage toddlers, whether you manage budgets or whether you manage bedtime routines, you are a leader wherever you are. And you can't lead well if you're disconnected from yourself. So, on this transformation journey, I'm just going to level set with you, right? Transformation, it's not a destination, it's a journey, a path that is very winding and messy, but profoundly beautiful. Get this, transformation is not going to be a straight line, it's not a linear progression. It's going to put you in spirals. You will revisit old patterns, you will see familiar faces, and you will sometimes feel like you're moving in the backward direction. But every time you choose awareness over autopilot, know that you are evolving. And when you start doing that inner work, that little child in you is always, there's an inner voice that's always asking, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And, that's Guilty as charged, that's the achiever's brain talking, the same one that loves KPIs and dashboards and metrics and progress charts, because you just want to know that, yes, you are making progress and you are reaching a certain milestone. So, what do these milestones look like, right? Transformation always doesn't show up in dramatic ways, but it whispers through different mile markers. You'll start noticing that you're responding with calm instead of reacting with chaos. You'll learn to say no, and you know what? You don't even feel guilty anymore about it. You'll notice moments of joy where before there was only a sense of urgency, like I got to do this as of yesterday. You'll stop seeking validation and you'll start valuing yourself. You'll realize your self-worth and you don't need any other authentication. You don't need those MFAs. You are enough. These are all signs that you are coming home to yourself. And as mentioned, yes, you will face storms and setbacks along the way, so be prepared. It's a package deal. You will slip and fall, you will backslide. Sometimes you may even self sabotage. And you'll wonder if you're even growing at all. But when all of these pop up or they show up, just pause. Pause not to judge yourself, but to listen. And remember, setbacks aren't punishments. They're just invitations for you to pause, reflect, realign, and just those course corrections, because you will know where are you not aligning with your values, because now you've started to listen to that inner voice of yours. So each time you return to the center, you strengthen it. Each time you honor your boundary, you're building self-trust. Each time you forgive yourself, you reclaim your power. This is about actually breaking old patterns and reprogramming your minds. It's not just learning something new, something of becoming, but it's undoing all those years of conditioning and replacing it with new beliefs and habits that serve the person you're becoming, that version of yourself that you chose to honor. In this digital transformation, I had to learn how to lead organizations to become and do something else that they weren't doing before. But in this inner transformation, I've learned I don't have to learn to become anything. I just have to learn how to be. That is as simple as it was. That is why we are also called as human beings. We aren't human becomings. So I learned the lesson of how to take your trauma and use that for transformation. We all carry stories, those same unheard. We sometimes, when we feel unheard, unseen, or those parts of the journey, those moments of failure, of betrayal, the rejections and the disappointments. But just so you know, wearing those stories like an invisible armor does you no good. Not only does it not protect you, it simply keeps you trapped. So replaying those stories over and over again, because I know you're hurting, but regurgitating the same story over and over again and sharing them with anyone who'll listen, it just keeps you stuck in that same energy. Your mind doesn't know the difference between what you're aspiring for and what you keep on repeating. It's just listening to whatever you've just been talking to everybody else about. And so it assumes this is the reality you are seeking, and guess what? It just keeps delivering more of the same. So if you want to break the cycle, you have to be the circuit breaker. That trauma, yes, it happened. Maybe it was real, but it's over. That trauma doesn't define you anymore. Just think of it as your karmic debt that you've paid off. Don't keep adding on to it by just, holding on, clinging on, and refusing to let go. Accept and embrace life as it unfolds. Let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because you matter even more. It's time to free yourself and rewrite a new story. You are the author of your own story. So just pick up the pen and write the best darn story that you could. Write the story that the narrative that really serves the person you're meant to become. Because let's face it, yeah, giving up that victim mindset and that self pity card is hard work. It was easy to hide behind that, but it's not serving you anymore. So give it up, let it go, and start working on your own self and become that version of yourself that you want to aspire for. It's going to require humility, courage, and a willingness to confront some extremely uncomfortable truths about ourselves. But here's the thing, as long as you keep clinging on to your old narratives, the ones that begin with, I can't, I have to, oh, I don't have a choice, you're already giving up your power even before you've stepped onto the field. So I often think of this as that chained elephant syndrome. When an elephant is young, they capture young baby elephants and they tie it to a post with a rope that it cannot break. And this elephant struggles for days and weeks and months just trying to free itself until one day it just gives up, like, it's not working, it's not going to free me up. And as time goes on, years later, that same elephant, who is now a very strong animal, is so strong that the elephant can uproot a tree, but it still remains shackled to that fragile rope, which doesn't even exist anymore. Not because it cannot break free, but because it believes it can't. And many of us operate in that same way. We've internalized these limitations that were maybe once they were true, maybe early in our careers, maybe from a past failure, but we keep living as if they still define us. So break those mental chains, because those chains become our invisible boundaries. And once you recognize that those constraints are self-imposed, something powerful happens. You will start noticing shifts within you. You stop asking for permission anymore, and you start creating possibilities. You lead differently, this time with agency, with ownership, and with clarity. It's recognizing that you are not just a passive passenger in your life, but you're in the driver's seat. So instead of waiting for permission or blaming external people, places, circumstances, you take full accountability and responsibility for creating the results that you want, and you start leading with intention, leading with clarity, and finding your purpose. That's when you stop reacting to life and you start redesigning it. The day you break that invisible chain is the day you stop managing circumstances and you just start mastering yourself. Transformation begins when you stop resisting and stop fighting with your past and start learning from it. When you stop seeing pain as a punishment and start seeing it as your teacher. What is it trying to teach me? What is it that it's telling me that I need to focus on? What part of my inner personality have I been ignoring for so long that it needs my attention? That's what it's trying to tell you. So the truth is that trauma and transformation, these are two sides of the same coin. Every storm that breaks you is also shaping you. Every ending is also quietly preparing you for renewal. When you meet those moments with compassion, not resistance, some profound shifts start happening. You stop surviving and you start transforming, leading yourself with grace and stepping into your own power. That's the essence of leadership, embracing growth and becoming the person you were meant to be. And when you radiate from that place with kindness, empathy, and grace, you don't just chase harmony, you become it. So here's what I want you to remember. Burnt out leaders breed burnt out systems, but nourished souls they magnetize harmony. And understanding yourself, truly knowing who you are beneath all that noise and all that, that's the gateway to your peace, joy, harmony. You don't have to chase them, they're already yours. You have the keys. In fact, you've always had them. Your nature, your true self is untouched, untamed, and unshakable. You don't need to become more. You simply need to remember who you are because you are enough. You have always been, always will be. And if you forget, because sometimes life will test you, just take a pause, take a deep breath, and whisper to yourself, come back home. That's where your leadership begins, and that's where your transformation continues. So the next time your to-do list looks like a CVS receipt and you're tempted to save the world before saving yourself, remember even superheroes take off their capes to recharge. So prioritize your power source because the world doesn't need a burnt out version of you. It needs the real you, radiant, rested, and fully alive. So may the transformation journey continue because true transformation is about returning home to yourself. That's where the real magic happens. If this episode resonates with you, do give a like and a subscribe and leave a comment and let me know what you think of it. Have a blessed day. ॐ सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ